What's up, everybody? Welcome to Moto. This will be the last episode of the saddlebags where we finally assemble them. You can see the pieces are now dry. I mean, they're not as uniformly dyed as I'd like them to be, but you know what? It's good enough. If I try to dye them more evenly, then we're going to end up with something like this where they're saturated with dye in places, and it'll make things a little bit more uneven. So I think I'm just going to keep it as is, and next step is to add some atomic wax and get them nice and polished so this brown really comes out, and then we're going to start assembling. So let's do that. Alright, everything has been dyed and polished, as you can see. I mean, from that angle, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got like this glossy, shiny finish to it. So now let's start assembling. So first we're going to deal with the lids. So we can put these guys off to the side just to create some space. These straps are going to be the last thing. That's going to be later. These are going to be in a bit. So first, the lids and mounting these guys, the plaques, onto them. So I'm going to put some, I'm going to rough this surface up and glue these on, and then make sure that the holes line up, and then we're going to stitch them. After that, we're going to look into riveting the straps on, and then from that we're going to then measure where these pieces with the buckles should sit on the front and stitch these onto here. Once we have that, then we're ready to start assembling the bag by putting the sides on there, stitching them, and then folding it over and stitching further. So let's begin by roughing up the surfaces here and gluing these guys on. Alright, so to roughen this surface up, we're going to use one of these etchers or whatever they're called, and literally just scratch up the surface. Create something a little easier for the glue to adhere to. Doesn't need to be much, just enough to, create some texture so that the glue has something to go into instead of just the flat surface there. Okay, so that's good enough. So let's line that up. That should be pretty spot on, but just to make sure, let's get some needles going. Make sure the holes lined up. Okay, the holes do line up. Now just a matter of applying some pressure and keeping it on there. Round ball to roll it out. For argument's sake, I just put the toolkit on there to make sure it gets glued. Alright, on to the next. waiting for the glue to dry so we can stitch these guys. So I mocked up the front straps, and this is kind of what the bag will end up looking like. I mean, pretty nice. I think actually the imperfections with the dyeing actually ended up making the bag have a little bit more character. So either way, I've punched the holes for the lid straps. I've marked where the buckle strap should be stitched on. So now it's just a matter of stitching this guy, riveting these guys, stitching the buckle strap on, and then we continue on with the rest of the assembly. So let's stitch these guys on. After stitching the plaque on and riveting the straps, this is what the lid looks like. I'm pretty happy with the result. So this is kind of what we're expecting to see on the bike. So nice shiny. And then in terms of how it will match with the rest of the bag, we're looking at something like that. Alright, the lids on both bags are done. We have the plaque stitched on and glued. We have the main straps riveted and hole punched, and we have the top and front edge stitched on the lid. As for the body, I've stitched on the strap and buckles. So now if we want to kind of mock things up, we would do so. There we go. So the bag would actually end up looking like this when it's on the bike, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So next steps, let's glue the bottom sides of the side panels so we can stitch them at the bottom, and then we're going to start moving up to stitching to the sides. Actually, you know what, before that I'm going to stitch this decorative line down here, since this actually doesn't attach to anything. It'll be easier to do now than later. So there's one on this side, one on the other side, and then we're going to deal with stitching the sides and moving on up. So let's do it. Now that I've stitched the bottom line over here, I have also glued the sides to the base body. And after I stitch them, that's kind of what they end up looking like. The edge will finish up later on once the whole thing is stitched. But now let's stitch this one, and then we'll move on to gluing the sides up and getting an actual bag. Okay, and this is after stitching the bottom pieces, as well as one of the sides here, all the way to the top. This one is glued, so we can stitch it up to here. And making some progress. Definitely the bag starts to take more of a shape of a bag. Still need to do the other one, but for now this is actually looking pretty good. Okay, a little more progress. The bag is the front side of the bag is stitched up, so we have a little bit of shape, and I've just started to glue the bottom part of the back side so we can stitch that. So this is kind of the shape that we're going for. You'll notice that the side pieces stick over the top a little bit. That's okay, because we're going to be actually trimming them as we stitch everything together. I just left a little bit extra because of the bends in the sides. I wasn't too sure exactly how much the top would need to be. But either way, that's some good progress. While I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm just gonna make some progress on the other side by doing the buckle straps, and then continue on with this. Alright, the body of the bag is almost completely stitched up. The only remaining piece is the back top side, as well as the lid. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these pieces together like I did before, and then only stitch them up to this point here. And then afterwards I'm going to bring in the lid and glue that onto here, and then stitch the lid along with the last little bit. Before we stitch the lid, I'm probably going to cut off the excess over here that we see at the top, just so it's all one level. And then once the lid is all on, we're actually going to finish these edges so they're like nice and smooth, and dye them so the bag looks more complete. but almost done. Now in terms of how the bag actually is going to work, it fits the stuff pretty well. So, there we go, that fits in there. Toss in the Allen keys as well, and the bag will carry that pretty well. Same with the user manual or service manual. We can fit that right in the bag, pretty much all the way in, and the lid will nicely close over that. So that's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. So let's glue these and stitch them up. Alright, now that the body of the bag is almost completely stitched, so the only thing remaining is the lid, really. This part here is not stitched, it's just glued. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut off the excess on the side pieces. So in order to do that, I'm just going to lay them flat like that, mark them, and cut across. There we go. Just making sure not to cut the stitching on one of the sides since that was already done. Okay, that looks pretty decent. And the other side. So, because I misaligned things a little bit, on one side it's quite a bit more diagonal than the other. So, thankfully, the lid will cover that up. And I mean, if it was perfect, it wouldn't be handmade. So, okay, and let's use our. There we go. And that's pretty much the body of the bag. So let's rough this side up right here and glue the lid on, and then final stitching. Perfect. Alright, first bag is done. So fully stitched. On the back we have the holes lining up. So for the straps here, 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 and here. We have the buckles in the front, nice and clean. Come on. Bag opens up. We can put our manual in there. Boom. Close it up. And we're good to ride worry-free with the manual inside. Alright, now let's finish up the other bag and we can go test them on the bike for the final hole punching of the straps on the back. And then all we'll need to do is then finish these edges so they look a little better. And these bags are done. Alright, now that we have both saddlebags ready, the last thing to do to them is finish these edges. So for that, let me just make some space here. What I'll do is I'm going to use my box cutter, X-Acto knife, whatever you want to call it. Just going to stroke it a little just to make sure it's nice and sharp. And then I'm going to shave the edges down to make sure that all the pieces are lined up and the same size. And then we're going to slick and dye them so that we have a nice finish. So to do that, let's start on this back side here. Literally what we're going to do is, so see how there's an evenness, like the inside piece is taller than the front piece. So we want to cut that so that things are all the same size. the lid now. Either way, that's kind of the idea of shaving these edges, and then we're just going to use the slicker with some dye and get them nice and slicked. So let's do all that and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, now that the edges are evened out, first thing we're going to do is just with a little bit of water slick them, just so that some of the fibers go down nicely. And then after that we're going to use the dye to dye these edges so that things are nice and sealed and they look a little bit better. So let's do that. This side has been slicked with just water, so as a comparison you can see how, well, I don't know if you can see it, but the other side looks very unfinished. This side at least is a little bit more glossy and slicked. So now we're just gonna take the dye and dab the edge to get it to be the darker brown, and then do one more round of slicking after that, and we should be done. So let's get some of that. Technically we need very little dye, so and you can already see how that gives it a much more finished look. There we go. And now give that a moment to dry and we slick it again. We might need to repeat that a few times, but as a comparison, like how much better that versus this looks like. So let's do that. Okay, and this is one bag finished. So we have the edges brown and darker, much like the rest of the bag. Same on the other side. They're slicked to my satisfaction. Probably could use more, but I think it's good enough. The bag opens up. It's white on the inside, or undyed rather, and that's it. So let's slick the edges on the other one, and then we're going to go downstairs and start mounting them. Alright, and the bags are finally done. So we have the bag opening up like that, or the front straps. This is what it will look like at the back when the straps are attached on the inside. I have the buckles on the straps, so if we were to pull one of these out, well, you can kind of see what it looks like. So we'll essentially go in and then under the other one. So boom, we'll just need to punch a hole. But let's go down to the bike and actually mount it and measure where those holes should be. And mount everything up, and this should be wrapped up. Alright, bag is on. We just need to measure where the holes for the straps will be and hole punch them and tighten them. So let's do that and move on to the next side. Alright, this side is mounted. The straps are all hole punched. I do need to trim the excess length just because there's no point to it. We just need to load up the bag. Let's get the other one mounted. And here's the bag on the other side. Again, same sort of thing. The straps need to be shortened, or maybe I just leave them. This side, I think it sits a little bit higher than the other side, but that's whatever. Let's get the seat mounted and check out how this thing looks. And this is the final product. The bags are nice and slick in there, and it's all good. In terms of how my body fits on there, it's actually pretty good. My heels slightly touch it, It'll be like this. I'm riding. I can still hug the tank. Just a little opening here. Here's my leg. Alright, so now the last thing is to fill them up and trim those straps. Let's go get some stuff. In order to make these things actually practical, we're going to put the Honda toolkits, these Allen keys, and the manual in them. So these should fit as I have designed it to fit. There we go. Since the battery's on this side, we're going to put the other heavy things on the other side. And for that, okay, and this as well. So, there we go. And that is it. The bags are done. The black and brown over. And yeah, we're gonna make some new grips. But that is it for now. Done. That was it for this episode. The bags are done. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available. Check me out at Balkan Moto 2018 at Instagram, and check out balkanmoto.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.